The CNN studio lights were bright as Representative Matt Gaetz's voice got louder. He pointed at Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett. "How long have you been in Congress? And what have you actually done?" Gaetz asked. "Americans need lawmakers who get things done, not just give speeches." The moderators tried to calm things down as Gaetz took over the conversation. Crockett stayed calm, waiting to answer while Gaetz kept criticizing her. "Your voters chose you to pass laws, not to become another TV commentator." Gaetz said, his voice rising. "Name one big law you've passed. Just one." The tension in the studio increased. The audience could tell the host was getting annoyed as she tried to speak. "Congressman, please," the host began, but Gaetz cut her off again. Finally, during a short pause, the host firmly interrupted. "Congresswoman Crockett, you have 30 seconds to answer before we take a break. What happened next silenced Gaetz." Shocked the host and made the segment go viral in hours. With a few well-chosen words, Crockett not only defended what she'd done, but also showed information that completely changed the conversation. If you want to see more important political moments that the main news often misses, hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss our next look at congressional fights that are changing American politics. Matt Gaetz made a name for himself in Congress by being bold and always ready for a fight. This Florida guy, now 41 and in his 4th term, is known for his tough questions and fiery speeches. He's got a law degree and used to be in the Florida House, so he knows his stuff and isn't scared to take on anyone. Lately, he's been complaining a lot about what he calls bad Democratic leadership in Congress. He's been calling out certain Democrats, and it gets a lot of attention online, which seems to make him even more confrontational. Jasmine Crockett does things differently. This 42-year-old from Texas is in her 2nd term and was a big-time civil rights lawyer before getting into politics. She was a great lawyer, winning tough civil rights cases and working as a public defender for over 10 years in Congress. She cares more about getting things done than being in the spotlight. While some people just want attention, she quietly works hard on complicated laws. People from both parties respect her because she's thorough and really knows how laws work. They were both on CNN to talk about the new infrastructure bill. The idea was for them to give different opinions on it, since not many people from both parties agree on it. But right away, Gaetz started talking about other stuff, attacking Democratic representatives and going after Crockett's work in Congress. People in America are tired of politicians who don't do much but act like they do. Gaetz said about 5 minutes into the show, "Congresswoman Crockett is a good example of someone who gives great speeches but hasn't really done anything in terms of laws." While Gaetz was getting more and more worked up, Crockett stayed calm, sometimes looking at her notes. What viewers didn't know was that Crockett had brought facts about working with others on laws that would prove Gaetz wrong about her record. It was about to be a really surprising and interesting political argument on TV. Have you ever seen someone's carefully made up story fall apart when they were faced with real proof? Tell us what you think about whether political discussions should focus on what politicians have actually done instead of just their personalities. We want to know what you think makes a good political conversation. Hold on. The host said, raising her hand, "We need to let Congresswoman Crockett answer these criticisms." Gaetz wasn't finished. "The American public should know who's really working for them in Washington." He went on, speaking over the host. "My team has passed several important laws, while the Congresswoman has been busy appearing on TV." The host interrupted, "Congressman Gaetz, you've had your say for a few minutes. It's only fair that we let Congresswoman Crockett respond." Gaetz leaned back, looking confident, and pointed to Crockett. "Go ahead," he said. "I'm eager to hear about these great things I've supposedly missed." The camera focused on Crockett, who was still calm and collected. She sat up a bit straighter and looked right at the host. "Thanks for letting me respond," Crockett said, her voice calm and clear. "You've got about 30 seconds before the break," the host said. Crockett opened a folder in front of her. "I'm glad Congressman Gaetz is so interested in what the legislature has achieved," she said, sounding purely professional, not at all emotional like Gaetz had been. Gaetz gave a little smirk, waiting for her to get defensive. "Since the congressman wants to talk about specific legislative wins," Crockett went on, "I thought we could talk about the Justice System Improvement Act that passed last session." She took a paper out of her folder and put it where the camera could see it. It was an official congressional record with some parts marked. "This law gives more help to public defenders and changes how we sentence people for non-violent crimes. I wrote 3 important changes to it," Crockett explained easily, "but what people watching might find interesting is that I actually wrote one of those changes with help from Congressman Gaetz's office." The camera showed Gaetz's face. His smirk was gone, and now he looked wide awake. "Actually," Crockett continued, flipping a page, "I have emails here between our legislative directors where they worked together on the wording that ended up in the final bill." The host raised an eyebrow. "So you're saying you and Congressman Gaetz worked together on this law?" "Definitely," Crockett said. "Our people wrote the prosecutorial transparency part together. It's just one example of how Congress can work together, even though you don't usually hear about it." Gaetz leaned in, looking uncomfortable. "I think the Congresswoman is exaggerating some staff talks he started, but Crockett held up another paper. I also have the record from when Congressman Gaetz spoke about it, praising it as a great example of cooperation. I think he said it showed what Americans want from their leaders. The host tried to get things back on track. This is interesting. Congressman Gaetz. What do you say? Gaetz fidgeted, not as confident as before. We deal with tons of changes and bills in Congress, he said. My staff works with other officers on small stuff. That doesn't change my main point about leadership. Crockett nodded. I agree that one thing doesn't show everything. That's why I brought this report, showing that my office got 17 changes added to laws last session. 9 had Republican support, like 2 from Congressman Gaetz. She pushed the report across the desk. The cool thing is, Crockett went on, these changes hit on the exact government stuff the congressman said he cares about. The host changed the subject a bit. So, are you saying there's more teamwork going on than we think, even with all the fights we see? Yep, Crockett said. People should know that even though the yelling makes for good TV, making laws means finding stuff everyone agrees on, no matter what party they're in. Gaetz tried to get things back on track. Nobody's saying there's zero teamwork on small stuff, but the Democrats are basically Crockett cut him off. Sounding sure of herself, sorry. But these changes weren't small. That transparency thing you liked, it's already changed how federal cases are tracked in 3 states, which is what you wanted, right? She flipped a page. And since you brought up that road bill we were supposed to talk about, that rule about reporting spending every 3 months, which you bragged about, was something I put in, and Congressman Roy helped. The host listened to her earpiece. We got to stop soon. But Congressman Gaetz got anything to say about all this? Gaetz straightened his tie, trying to stay calm. I think we're getting lost in the details of how Congress works. He said, the main thing is that the Democratic leaders haven't fixed the big problems that Americans are dealing with. Crockett didn't back down. I get that the congressman wants to paint a picture of complete disagreement, she said, but what we've actually done in Congress shows a more complicated situation. People watching need to decide if they want representatives who stir up trouble to get on TV, or those who can find common ground while sticking to what they believe in. As the cameras were about to turn off, people watching could see Gaetz looking closely at Crockett's papers. He didn't seem so sure of himself anymore. When the show started again after the break, things felt different. Gaetz had been reading through Crockett's stuff during the break, and he wasn't as aggressive as before. Welcome back, the host said. Before the break, Congresswoman Crockett showed us some unexpected things about working together on laws. Congressman Gaetz, you've had a chance to read it. What do you think? Gaetz moved in his chair and spoke more carefully. Okay, yeah. People who work for different Congress members work together on the small details of laws. That's just how it is. But I'm still worried about the big picture of where we're headed with our policies. The host pushed, but you backed those specific changes Crockett talked about, right? Gaetz paused, then said, yeah, some stuff about being open and responsible lines up with what I usually support, but that doesn't mean I agree with the whole plan. Crockett nodded. Exactly. Good lawmakers can stick to their beliefs, but still find ways to work together when it helps the people they represent. Everyone says Congress is a mess, but they don't see that we do work together sometimes, even if it's just a little bit, and we get things done. She opened a folder. I keep track of every change and bill I've worked on since I got here, who supported it and what happened. I share it with the folks back home. And what does that information say about working with the other side? The host asked. It proves my point, Crockett said. Last session, almost half the changes I got added to bills that passed had at least one Republican helping out. A bunch of these things we worked on together were about stuff Gaetz cares about, like government being open, cutting rules that don't matter, and better oversight. The host then asked Gaetz, did Congresswoman Crockett get it right about your priorities? Gaetz agreed. Yeah, I've always pushed for more open and responsible government. So the host wondered, maybe you two agree more than it seemed at first? Crockett chimed in. There's a big difference between just putting on a show of disagreeing and having real disagreements based on principle. The first one makes for good TV, but it doesn't get anything done. The second one lets us find things we can agree on, even if we still see things differently overall. She put another paper on the table. This is about the infrastructure bill we were supposed to be talking about. Even though Congressman Gaetz voted against it, which I respect because he has his reasons, his team gave us some really helpful suggestions for 3 oversight rules that ended up in the bill. The host looked surprised. Really? Gaetz paused, thinking, my people always give feedback on bills, even ones I vote against. It's just part of doing our jobs right. Exactly, Crockett said. That's the kind of detail that gets missed when people make Congress out to be totally split. Things are way more complicated than that. And honestly, it's more heartening for people who worry about whether the government can actually work. The exchange made a splash right away. Clips from the segment blew up on social media in just a few hours, racking up millions of views and tons of comments. People were really into the switch from a fight to a real talk. Crockett's chill way of showing proof of both parties working together, which went against what Gaetz said about her. Changed the game for how we talk about politics. Big news places covered it. Headlining the crazy idea of reps who usually seem to disagree actually working together. Political experts from everywhere pointed out how important the talk was, saying that the media rarely shows when lawmakers cooperate. We saw something you don't see every day. A clear look at how Congress runs, said James, a long-time political reporter. Rep Crockett pretty much showed the difference between what they do for show and how they really govern. If you dug this analysis and want more stuff that goes deeper than just the political drama, hit that subscribe button and the bell. Tell us in the comments what else about Congress you want us to check out in future videos.